I'm sorry, but that is stupid. Okay, I'll explain why. Kids, you need to learn this. This is a very simple thing to learn, and you'll go through life much further than many of these professors go. Make yourself 3 columns. Facts are in the middle. It's a fact Grand Canyon exists. The evolutionist has an interpretation of that fact, and the creationist has an interpretation of the fact. Now, it's not part of the fact, it's an interpretation of the fact. The evolutionist says the canyon formed slowly by a little bit of water and lots of time. The creationist says, oh no, we think it formed quickly by lots of water and a little bit of time. It's a fact the earth has sedimentary layers. That's not a question. How did they get there? Well, the evolutionist says these layers formed slowly over millions of years. The creationist says, no, these layers are all from the flood in the days of Noah. Now, it seems like the professors are always trying to erase the line between their interpretation and the fact and make their interpretation part of the fact column, and it's not. And I think I can demonstrate Grand Canyon was not formed by the Colorado River. I was in a debate recently, and this professor said, Dr. Hovind, you're so stupid. Obviously, it took millions of years to form the Grand Canyon. I said, well, sir, I've seen Grand Canyon many times. I taught earth science for 15 years. I've studied it intensively. Just flew over it last week, as a matter of fact, twice. Got a perfect view of it going out to California and back, flying from wherever I was, Florida. That's where I live. This textbook says, the Colorado River has cut through layer upon layer of rock over millions of years. Well, if you built a dam across Grand Canyon, it would take a lot of dirt or concrete, but if you could, okay, it'd be a huge dam. A giant lake would back up behind that dam, covering several states. That purple area is all drained right through the Grand Canyon drainage basin. This snow line tells a very interesting story. In between these 2 red lines is snow. This is a picture from a satellite showing about 150 or 200 miles of the canyon area. Real wide shot. The river enters the canyon at the far right. The river is 2,800 feet above sea level. As it goes down through the canyon, the ground is rising up. It's called the Kaibab uplift. Okay, the uplift is 7,000 or 8,000 feet above sea level. Interesting. The river flows downhill. All rivers flow downhill. So as the river enters the canyon and flows downhill from there, when it gets to the 1,800-foot elevation mark, the top of the canyon is 7,000 or 8,000 feet above sea level, so it's over a 1-mile drop. Very impressive, hole in the ground. But some points to ponder. I said to the professor, I said, sir, did you know the top is higher than the bottom? He said, yeah. I said, did you know the river only runs through the bottom? He said, yeah. I said, sir, the top is higher than where the river enters the canyon by 4,000 feet. Rivers don't flow uphill. There's no delta. Where's all the mud that washed out? There's no way that river made that canyon. Grand Canyon is a breached dam, a spillway that washed out. There was a lake probably for some length of time after the flood and got too full and all that water went roaring through there. Probably carved that canyon out in a couple of weeks. Not millions of years. Absolutely impossible for that river to have made that canyon. We cover lots more on that on videotape number 6 of our series. But they tell the kids, the Colorado River made this canyon slowly over millions of years. I'm sorry, that is stupid. That can't possibly be true. They need to learn the facts. Charlie Lyell, back in 1830, he was a lawyer from Scotland. Somebody calculated one time that if all the lawyers in the world were laid end to end around the equator, we would all be better off. Charlie Lyell hated the Bible. In 1830, he wrote this book right here. Oh, I got it down on the table. I picked up the wrong one. Principles of Geology. Here it is on this table. Charlie Lyell wrote this book, 1830. In this book, he mocked at scriptures. He hated the Bible. You can see it mocking all through they're here. In here, he and other fellows back in that time, Cuvier, Steno Smith, and some of these guys, they invented the geologic column. How many have ever heard of the geologic column before? They say each of the layers is a different age, you know, Cenozoic, Mesozoic, Paleozoic, Archeozoic, all them Zoic boys. And they gave each layer of rock a name, like maybe you saw the movie Jurassic Park, and an age, and an index fossil. This was done in 1830, way before there ever was a carbon dating or potassium argon dating or lead-208, lead-206, uranium-235, uranium-238. Didn't exist, folks. The dating text didn't exist. They just made up these numbers out of the clear blue sky. The geologic column is the Bible for the evolutionist. It can only be found one place in the world, the textbooks. There is no geologic column, and they know it. This fellow says, if there were a column of sediments, unfortunately, no such column exists. The geologic column is a hoax. Does not exist. It is stupid. Those layers cannot be different ages. If the geologic column were all in one place, it would be 100 miles thick. Didn't happen. By the way, if the geologic column were true, if you look at the side of Grand Canyon and see all these thousands of layers, why are there no erosion marks between the layers? Don't you think if one layer sat there for 10 million years waiting for the next one, it would rain once or twice? No erosion marks between the layers. Interesting. Something to consider anyway. Those layers were all deposited very rapidly. And I think we can demonstrate that scientifically. If you take a jar of dirt, put some water in it and shake it up and set it down, it'll settle into layers for you automatically. It just takes a few minutes. It's called hydrologic sorting. The gravels go to the bottom, and then the sands and the silts and the clays. It'll sort just like that, folks. Go home and do it with a jar. You'll see what I'm talking about. Years ago, I was preaching in Union Center, South Dakota. Union Center is right there. It's not even on the map. There are 40 people in the whole town. 38 of them came to church. I don't know where the other 2 were, but they showed up later, I guess. But the preacher said, hey, Brother Hovind, let's go down to Rapid City, South Dakota. They've got a museum down there with a bunch of dinosaur bones. I said, all right, I like dinosaurs, let's go. So we all drove down to the museum. The guide met us at the door. He said, would you like me to give you a tour? We said, that would be great, sir. The first place we stopped on the tour was the geologic time scale, the big chart. They got it behind glass so the kids can't touch it. You know, this is holy, sacred. And the guide said, now, boys and girls, this layer of rock right here is about 70 million years old. My daughter was 12 at the time. She raised her hand. She said, mister, how do you know that layer is 70 million years old? He said, well, honey, we tell the age of the layers by what kind of fossils we find in them. They're called index fossils. Oh, she said, thank you, sir. We walked around the other side of the dinosaur, and we're standing over here, and the guide said, now, folks, these bones you're looking at are about 100 million years old. My daughter raised her hand again. She said, mister, how do you know those bones are 100 million years old? He said, honey, that's a good question. We tell the age of the bones by which layer they come from. She said, excuse me, sir, but when we were standing over there, you told me you knew the age of the layers by the bones, and now you're telling me you know the age of the bones by the layers. She said, isn't that circular reasoning? I thought, wow, a chip off the old block. That guide had the strangest look on his face. It was almost as if he were thinking. He looked at my daughter. He looked at me. I wasn't about to help him. I thought, wow, this is going to be good. I got to hear this. He looked back at my daughter. He said, you know, you're right. That is circular reasoning. I never thought of that before. Folks, geologic column is a joke. It doesn't exist. It's all based on circular reasoning. We can demonstrate that clearly. Get our video number 4 if you want more information on how it's all based on circular reasoning. I'll just give you a couple of quotes here. This guy says, the rocks do date the fossils, but the fossils date the rocks more accurately. Stratigraphy cannot avoid this kind of reasoning if it insists on using only temporal concepts because circularity is inherent. You have to use circular reasoning to get it right. Well, that's stupid. And you don't need to be too bright to figure out that's stupid, okay? This geologic column contains limestone scattered all throughout the geologic column. I like to ask him the question, I say, fellows, you have limestone scattered all through this column. How do you know the age? It's all limestone. I mean, if I handed you a piece of limestone, how would you know if it's 100 million year old Jurassic limestone or 600 million year old Cambrian limestone? I mean, how would you tell the difference? There's only one way they can tell, by the index fossils. That's how it's done, folks. That is stupid. Because those fossils don't count for anything, as we'll see in a minute. They tell the kids each of these layers is a different age. 100 million, 200 million, 300 million, real impressive, huge numbers. Now, Charlie Darwin did not like round numbers. He wanted to be more precise. He said the Wealdian deposits are 306,662,400 years old. Now, okay, Charlie, I think that's stupid. Those layers are not different ages, folks. All over the world we find petrified trees standing up, running through multiple rock layers. Now, if you get a petrified tree standing up running through different rock layers. I don't think it's smart to say those layers are vastly different ages. Petrified trees in the vertical position. They find them all over the world. Okay, here's one from Alabama. Come out of a seam of coal, through 20 feet of rock, into another seam of coal. They found about 3 dozen of them, I think, in that one little coal mine, one little area, while they're digging the coal out. Petrified trees standing up. Cookeville, Tennessee. They found a bunch of them. This one's 30 feet tall, standing up. Joggins, Nova Scotia is famous for their petrified trees standing up in the vertical position. All over the area there, folks. Those trees did not get slowly covered by the sediments over millions of years. They would rot and fall down. Sometimes the petrified trees are upside down, running through many rock layers. Scientists estimate at the bottom of Spirit Lake in Mount St. Helens there are now 20,000 trees that were blown out by the volcano. Thousands of them are standing up in the bottom of the lake, already buried 15 feet deep in mud. None of them grew there. Those trees are going to petrify. It only takes a few years to petrify a piece of wood. In the laboratory, it can be done in 24 hours. We cover lots more on how fast things can petrify in videotape number 6 of our series. But they dug up a guy, they buried this doctor in Tennessee. 14 years later, his wife died. When they went to dig the grave, water soaked into her grave. And they said, oh, we can't bury Grandma there. So they dug a hole on the other side. Water soaked in. So they dug a hole and buried Grandma somewhere else. And then the kids got worried about Grandpa, and so they went and dug up his grave. The arms had rotted off, but the rest of the body had petrified in 14 years, turned to stone from water running through the coffin. I got tons of material on how fast things can petrify. Those layers are not different ages. They all formed in one big flood in the days of Noah. To tell the kids the layers are different ages is stupid. That just simply is not true. So what about carbon dating and potassium argon dating and rubidium strontium dating and lead-208, lead-206, uranium-235, uranium-238? Well, we'll cover that after a quick break here. Show you some ways that this is just stupid, okay? That's not a way to tell the age of anything. We're going to give you some more evidence that evolution is stupid. Now, if you want to believe in it, that's perfectly fine. I don't care what you believe in. But the devil is laughing at you for believing in that. He has you fooled, and he's laughing at you. Okay? If you want to believe you came from a rock, well, you just enjoy yourself. But that's not so.